Welcome. In this video we're going to be taking a quick look at Lisa Rose, an epic grade DPS class Elune. Looking over at her base stats at 6 star, her HP is okay at 21.7k with her attack at 5.1, almost 5.2k, and her PDEF MDEF at 2.5 and 2.6k respectively. Her attack speed at 112 does put her as one of the fastest Elunes in the game, making her very easy to move first, and then she has a decent crit rate at 84, not percent, but the 84 stat, meaning that she does have a little bit higher crit rate than most, but that's pretty typical for most DPSs. As she is transcended up to the max at +5, her HP does go up to a 32.6k, which isn't bad for a DPS epic. Her attack at 7.7 is also pretty good for an epic, but her PDEF and MDEF is still pretty low at 3.7, 3.9, as typical for most DPS epic grades, meaning that she is going to be somewhat squishy, so you're going to have to protect her, especially if you're using against hard-hitting other Elunes or enemies. Let's look at the skills. The first skill, this is a non-typical skill, but there are a few like this. This one attacks all enemies as a first skill. This is a multi-hit, 5-hit skill, dealing damage as an AoE to all enemy targets. As this skill is leveled up to the max at +6, the damage does increase, but don't expect it to do a lot of damage to anything, just it's a way to hit everything. This can be good and bad, so depending on the team that you're taking it into, so you need to be wary of that. So it's something that you're not going to be able to focus the fire on or damage with, but it is something where you can use her to just nuke down AoEs, making this skill really good for PvE, but just okay for PvP. The skill gem set of this one, the red, red, orange, ignores 3% of the target's physical defense. This is pretty good, as this skill really doesn't do anything else other than just attacking all enemies. Ignoring some of their physical defense just makes this skill hit harder. This is pretty good, especially if you're dealing with high PDEF based enemies. So anything with high PDEF, this will make it hit a little bit harder, which is always going to be good. It's red, red, orange, which is physical damage, and crit rate, so it's not a bad option to do for this skill. Looking at her special skill, this is a 2 soul costing skill, and it is a self buff. What this one does is her accuracy increases by 40 until her next turn, and she gains a soul effect that lets her attack again with her machine gun fire, which is her first skill, after any allies use an attack that consumes soul. This buff is removed once she is attacked and cannot be used when allies are not present, meaning that you can't use the skill if there's no allies there on your team and she's the only person remaining. But also if she's attacked, then this buff goes away too. Now, it's a soul effect, so if it's just a strip, then no damage, then it's not going to go away. But if it is a strip with damage, then it will take it away, even though it's a soul effect, because the buff is removed once she's attacked. Now, this will automatically use machine gun fire, and it doesn't matter. So if you use a buff, say like a Wei buff that uses souls, then she will attack, and since her first skill is just AoE, it'll just hit everything anyway. So it's a way to just add damage from your team by every time. If she buffs this until her next turn, she's just going to be supporting them. Every time they do something, anytime they use a skill that uses soul, she's going to attack with them. Now if they just use their primary skill or their normal skill, then it's not going to attack. And if she gets hit by an AoE, then it's going to remove this and she won't attack anymore either. Now this skill, as it's leveled up to the max at +6, the accuracy goes up by 240, which makes her pretty good for accuracy, but it doesn't do anything else to the skill. It just increases that. So it's not that important to level this skill right away. It's probably one of the later ones you can level, as it doesn't really do anything else. The skill gem set of it, violent, which is speed, gives a 5% chance of resistance to remove when hit. Not that great. 5% chance is pretty low. The effect is pretty meaningless. It doesn't do a lot. Um, and the skill gems themselves increases her speed by a lot, meaning that she's going to be a lot faster. But since this buff only lasts until her next turn anyway, if you make her too fast, then if you buff it, you potentially will just lap the rest of your team, and then you just wasted 2 souls to do nothing. So I really wouldn't recommend probably going with the full violence on this one. I would go with, basically anything else like the yellow, just to increase the accuracy if you're going to go with anything. But the skill gem set effect on this one is pretty useless, and there's not much that really helps it. So keep that in mind if you do gem this one. Her ultimate skill is another AoE, so her 2 main attacks are both AoEs, so which is pretty nice. And then she has a self buff, which allows her to AoE too. This one is an AoE that does 10 hits. It's physical damage. The damage is pretty decent. If it lands as a crit, then it'll cause a bleeding effect for 3 turns. As the skill is leveled up, the damage goes up to a pretty decent amount. It's still multi-hits, and the bleeding goes to a 4 turn. Now, the skill gem effect on this one is red, orange, orange, which is physical damage and then crit, crit. So since you're wanting it to land as a crit to do those bleeding effects, this isn't too bad of an option because it adds more crit rate to the skill. The buff that you get from this one is a 10% chance of using support fire, which is her special skill. So you have a 10% chance of her self-buffing support fire after she uses her ultimate skill. Not bad. So it's a low chance at 10% to happen, but you can go with that one just for that off chance of it happening and you not having to use souls to do it. Or you can go ahead and just go with like a full orange set of skill gems on this one, just to increase that crit rate as much as possible to make sure you land those bleeding effects, because that's going to be really good damage from her, is those bleeds, because it's soul damage. Looking at her first passive now, this increases her attack speed by 20% and her accuracy rate is reduced by 20%. So this means that it's harder for her to land those bleeds because of the lower accuracy, but her attack speed increased by 20% does make her very fast, especially since her base attack speed is one of the highest in the game. So this means that she's very, very quick. Even though she might not have good accuracy to land bleed effects, she's still going to be very fast. Her second passive, this one, her crit rate increases by 5% for every 1% of her HP lost. Since she is an epic and she is pretty squishy, this means that when she takes damage, it's going to be increasing her crit rate, so she's going to be more likely to crit as she gets hit. This is good and bad. It's good because it increases her crit rate. It's bad because her crit rate only goes up when she's getting hit, and you don't want that because she's squishy. Her third passive now, this one, the damage increases by 30% when attacking an opponent with higher HP. So anything with higher HP than her, the damage increases by 30%. This can make her pretty good when attacking, the supports or healers or, tanks or whatever. It just increases her damage by 30%, which is pretty good. So as their HP gets lower than hers, though, you don't get this bonus damage anymore. But starting off, it's pretty decent, and she does do pretty good damage. So with the 2 AoEs that she has, she is pretty good at doing damage for PvE, for clearing waves or clearing mobs, because she can do good damage with 2 AoEs just to clear out waves really quick and move on. So as a farming Elune, she can be pretty good for that. Just as long as you give her pretty good gear for damage, she'll be able to clear stuff out really quick and she'll be a good farmer. As far as PvP goes, she's not going to be that great. She's an epic, but she doesn't have anything really that's going to be that amazing in her kit to help. She doesn't have the CC for you. She does have some bleed effects, but she has lower accuracy as part of her passive just to make her quicker, which means you have to give her accuracy or you have to constantly keep buffing her special. So, and she's going to be really squishy to certain teams, like any team that runs an Artemiel in defense. Anytime she attacks, she's going to be getting revenged by the Artemiel, which means she's just going to take a ton of damage. So she's not gonna be that great for PvP, especially at, you know, the higher levels, but she can be pretty good for PvE content. So something to keep in mind. She's not too bad overall. She's got 2 nice AoEs, so as a farmer she can be pretty good, especially if built well, but for PvP, probably not the best thing to use. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. If you have any comments or questions, leave them below and I'll answer them as soon as I can. Thank you.